Hey everybody, welcome back. Now that we are about to begin the article writing portion of this class, I'm going to give you some advice that will help you craft your writing so that it communicates ideas with clarity. I'm going to use this term thesis and support. Thesis and support describes the basic structure of much communication that happens in our society, and because of the far reach of the society of which we are a part, the world itself. Needless to say, there exist a large number of other patterns for creating and for conveying meaningful utterances, but in what is called the Western world, thesis and support reigns. And in college settings and in classes from all kinds of majors, thesis and support is the expectation and the norm. This is one reason why we must master this mode of communication above all others in this class. You might recall that we have encountered this idea before. In the article entitled Writing and Learning to Write, Doug Hess tells us that, quote, a good deal of writing takes the form of generalization and support. The writer has a progression of points he or she wants to make and includes support for each assertion, sometimes with one idea and its support in each paragraph. If this works well, readers feel as though they are being led in some meaningful progression from one idea to the next. When Hess says generalization and support, he's referring to the same idea of thesis and support. A common image to convey the thesis and support mode is the ladder of abstraction, coined first by linguist S.I. Hayakawa. Here is an image of the ladder that I have drawn on a whiteboard. The basic idea is that there are different kinds of words. Some are concrete and refer to specific things, and some are abstract and refer to ideas or concepts. Concrete words include table, piano, Benny the Beagle, etc., whereas abstract words include things like loyalty, justice, evil, things we can't see but rather think about. Notice the percentages on the ladder. In a given essay, article, or paragraph, you should stick to this rule of thumb. For every 10 to 20% of ideas or concepts, or generalization, or thesis, there should be 80 to 90% of concrete evidence or illustration to support it. Now, you don't need to learn about this model, necessarily, because by virtue of your living and growing up in the environment in which this mode remains predominant, you have been exposed to examples of it for your entire life. Perhaps noticing these examples is a worthwhile exercise. Once you see this and the way communication happens, you can really never unsee it, and you'll see it all around you, from advertisements to TV shows to memes. It is even a feature of effective conversations. Take a listen to this bit by George Carlin.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms or euphemistic language. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. And it gets worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse. I'll give you an example of that. There's a condition in combat. Most people know about it. It's when a fighting person's nervous system has been stressed to its absolute peak and maximum, can't take any more input. The nervous system has either snapped or is about to snap. In the First World War, that condition was called shell shock. Simple, honest, direct language. 2 syllables. Shell shock. Almost sounds like the guns themselves. That was 70 years ago. Then a whole generation went by, and the Second World War came along, and the very same combat condition was called battle fatigue. 4 syllables now. Takes a little longer to say. Doesn't seem to hurt as much. Fatigue is a nicer word than shock. Shell shock. Battle fatigue. Then we had the war in Korea, 1950. Madison Avenue was riding high by that time, and the very same combat condition was called operational exhaustion. Hey, we're up to 8 syllables now. And the humanity has been squeezed completely out of the phrase. It's totally sterile now. Operational exhaustion. Sounds like something that might happen to your car. Then, of course, came the war in Vietnam, which has only been over for about 16 or 17 years. And thanks to the lies and deceit surrounding that war, I guess it's no surprise that the very same condition was called post-traumatic stress disorder. Still 8 syllables, but we've added a hyphen. And the pain is completely buried under jargon. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I'll bet you if we'd have still been calling it shell shock, some of those Vietnam veterans might have gotten the attention they needed at the time. I'll bet you that.
See how he starts with a general idea that our language has gotten softer and has gotten worse over time? Everything that follows serves as an illustration of that idea. Also notice the 80-20 or perhaps 90-10 distribution. Most of the time is taken up with his example. This is the ladder of abstraction at work to create effective communication and to make a point. He puts forth a thesis and then he supports it. Now, let's look at some examples from the readings from our class. Look here at how Linda Flower, in her article, Writing for an Audience, uses the ladder of abstraction in big and small ways. First, let's note that she mentions 3 areas. She says, quote, "The critical differences for writers usually fall into 3 areas: the reader's knowledge about the topic, his or her attitude toward it, and his or her personal or professional needs." Unquote. She does this right at the beginning and then gives a section of her article to each one of these items. In other words, she starts higher on the ladder with ideas and then goes lower in each paragraph. She also constructs her communication this way in small ways, on the paragraph level. Look at this paragraph, for example, within her section entitled Attitudes. Quote, "As you can see, a reader's image of a subject is often the source of attitudes and feelings that are unexpected and, at times, impervious to mere facts. This is all a thesis or a generalization. Now here comes her support. A simple statement that seems quite persuasive to you, such as, 'Lake Wampago would be a great place to locate a new music camp,' could have little impact on your reader if he or she simply doesn't visualize a lake as a great place." See how she makes a claim at the beginning of this paragraph, and then right after that gives an example to support that claim? Ladder of abstraction, generalization and support, thesis and support. Anne Lamott is up to the same thing here. Watch the color coding as has been applied all throughout this presentation. Blue for the general or abstract statement and red for the concrete. Note that I cut this quotation down a bit for brevity's sake. Quote, "The first draft is the child's draft. You just let this childlike part of you channel whatever voices and visions come through and onto the page. If one of the characters wants to say, 'Well, so what, Mr. Poopy Pants?' you let her. No one is going to see it. If the kid wants to get into really sentimental, weepy, emotional territory, you let him. There may be something in the very last line of the very last paragraph on page 6 that you just love, but there is no way to get to this without first getting through the first 5.5 pages." Unquote. But also, often enough, when we hear a song, for example, and we think that it is meaningful, it is probably because the writer has used thesis and support, and in turn is utilizing the ladder of abstraction. Look no further than classic hip-hop or even country music. See the ladder of abstraction at work in Ice Cube's "It Was a Good Day" and Nas's "If I Ruled the World." And if you like country, try George Jones's "Things Have Gone to Pieces." With your eyes open to it, you'll see the ladder of abstraction everywhere, perhaps even in this presentation. And I encourage you to find ways to use it in your own writing as well. Think of it when writing paragraphs and indeed full drafts of your research article. Whether you're writing about the environment, a pandemic, a law, or a policy, think about how you can present first a general idea and then support it with evidence and illustrations from your own knowledge and research.